A very good evening and thanks for clicking on to the Friday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. We have got a little bit of a battle between low pressure and high pressure at the moment across the British Isles and Western Europe. And the reason why is we've got somewhat more of a blocky weather pattern now. Instead of having that rip-roaring jet west to east across the Atlantic, it's become a lot more amplified, a lot more wavy. So we've got surges of warmer coming into the eastern half of Europe, for example, while we've got colder air coming in to the western side of the British Isles here. So in the last 24 hours or so, we've generally had a kind of west to northwesterly airflow, dragging in cooler, fresher air from Iceland and even as far away as Greenland. And that has been producing some pretty hefty showers running that northwesterly airstream into the British Isles over the last day or so. So as we head into the weekend, it looks as if that area of low pressure is going to slip away to the east. We're going to pull in more of a northerly airflow, so more Arctic maritime air as opposed to maritime polar air. So we're basically pulling in a stronger northerly airflow between low pressure centered to the just off the Norwegian coast. It's a high pressure centered down towards the Azores here, so we're pulling in our air from almost a due north direction. So as we go into the weekend here, folks, it looks as if we are going to see that high pressure system poke its nose into the British Isles. But if you notice here, we've got the next system coming in from the west, from the Atlantic here. So this is what I mean about a bit of a fight between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. And the general steering of this pattern at the moment, you have to trace it back a little bit more up towards Greenland, up towards the far north of the British Isles, where blocking high pressure is the dominant driver at the moment. And what that's doing is essentially, instead of having areas of low pressure just basically go west to east, we're seeing it kind of bump into the high and getting deflected to the south down over the British Isles. And you can see that as we go through the weekend and into Monday, you can see how that area of low pressure gets shunted to the south, high pressure to the north, and that area of high pressure near the Azores has another chance of pumping heights further north, and basically hooking the two up. So you've got an area of high pressure east southeast of Iceland. You've got that Azores high. Once that feature gets forced down southeast into France, where we'll get a lot of wind and rain and very chilly weather indeed, you're going to have that high push into the British Isles and settle things down. So when you do get that, of course, you get lighter winds, you've got the clear skies at night, and of course fog and frost will become a fairly dominant and widespread factor, I believe, in the nights as we go into next week, rather than having cold winds and shower activity and so on and so forth. I think we're going to see a much more settled, fresher weather pattern. Of course, at this time of the year, those fog patches that develop late evening and during the overnight can stick around for most of the day during the daytime, because there's no wind and the sun is not as high in the sky, so it doesn't melt away the fog. It remains stuck in place. So you get really cool days at this time of the year with high pressure and control, and of course at night time you get fog as well as that frost, especially where the skies remain clear. But you notice it's still not a stuck pattern. We don't have high pressure and we don't have low pressure dominating the pattern. What we've got is essentially a mix and a battle between the two. You can see here another weather system pushing in. This is into the latter part of next week. Bear in mind, of course, this model will chop and change, but this is just one model run, if you will. And you can see here this feature pushed into the UK, and again, like the last one, at the beginning of next week, you can see here this system then starts to get deflected back south once again as well. So you notice here the high pressure is really, in a sense, pinballing these areas of low pressure around. They just don't have that flow west to east across the continent at the moment, because high pressure is further north, and essentially that is basically acting like little stoppers in the pinball machine. The ball just gets bounced around, if you will, and that's exactly what these areas of high pressure are doing at the moment. So it's quite interesting to see that. You can see here that we've got a nice area of high pressure centered over Scandinavia, extending towards Iceland. You've got a big vortex of low pressure here spinning around at the base of the trough here. And of course, by this stage, what you've got is essentially easterly winds, so a cold easterly wind coming in off the continent. And of course, this would be a cracking weather pattern if you skipped ahead a couple of months into the month of December. Certainly, this would be a very, very chilly pattern indeed, that's for sure. So it's interesting to see this taking place at the moment. And I'll show you something else in a second that may whet your appetite as well with regards to winter weather. So you can see here, this is the this is the 850 millibar temperature anomaly, and this basically represents the air masses that are in place. So this is the air mass at 5,000 feet. And you can see here, very, very chilly air centered over the British Isles here at the moment. Very, very warmer. We've had record-breaking heat across, Israel, Cyprus, Turkey, up into the eastern side of the continent, really, and even up into northwestern Russia. We've had unusually warm temperatures here. So you can see the representation of this kind of amplified pattern. The jet stream comes down south of the British Isles, north, up, way up into almost the Arctic region here, and basically you've got these pools of cool versus warm, this amplification of the pattern, and that represents a negative Arctic oscillation and a negative North Atlantic oscillation. The problem is, folks, that we have seen this before at this time of the year, even into November. We've seen it last November. Remember how chilly it was at times last November, and yet we just seen the polar vortex just crank right up to record-breaking levels, and basically winter was a washout. Hopefully that does not repeat this year, and I do believe that there is going to be big differences this year compared to last year. But you can see here as we skip through that with the weather front pushing in, we have a little bit of a surge in temperature, but it's quickly replaced by more cold air. And you notice here the amount of cold air that's generally in this weather pattern. You notice even the eradication of this warmth over Eastern Europe, it gets wiped away, and we've got a lot of cold air in the European pattern as we go through the next couple of weeks here or so, folks. And the reason why is because we've got a negative Arctic oscillation. And you can see it's generally kind of just below the neutral line at the moment. But notice here, a lot of the general consensus takes it very, very negative indeed. And that is something very, very interesting as we go forward here. And look at the North Atlantic oscillation. There's some model runs that are taking it right off the scale. That is fascinating to see, because that could suggest that we could see this a wee bit later down the road here. And if we do see this, and we also see the negative Arctic oscillation like this come the winter months, well, I'll tell you what, we are in for some cold weather this upcoming winter season. But of course, a lot of things can change, a lot of things can turn around, and that may not be the case. So let's just watch the pattern, watch the trend, and let's hope that this weather pattern continue to maintain itself here. That's it for today. Hope you have a great evening, a great weekend, and I'll be back in the next few days with more. Bye for now.